to our Ashes of Creation live stream. Today we're going to be switching things up a little bit, and we're going to be kind of going over our game development and giving you guys an update on everything that we've got going on. So first things first is Stephen will go over the studio update, and then we're actually going to have some guests on.
Guests?
Guests on, yes. No. First, Jeff will be talking about design, and then we actually will have someone coming from an environment team as well as the character team to be discussing what those teams are up to. And if you all like this format, convince Stephen that it's a good. He's nervous how this.
I'm on this side now.
I know, it's freaking me out.
Yeah,
actually.
It's so that we can
After
swap the
2
person
years
in
of
and out
doing
easy.
I'm a creature of habit.
Me
Yeah,
too.
I'm sorry, I'm making things weird for you all. But yeah, so we're gonna be doing that. It's gonna be a little bit interesting. Each team has maybe some assets and stuff that they're gonna share with you, so that's really exciting. And you know, if this works out, we might be doing this in the future and bringing on other people on other teams. So I want to do some quick updates and then we'll let Stephen chat all about the studio. So quick updates are that we put out a new Dev Diaries. It is with Carson Steele, our senior weapon artist.
Senior weapons artist.
He is amazing. He makes so much art. He's also working on his first character, which has been really cool to see.
Yeah, he's working on the
courier.
The courier, which was one of the pets that was back in July of 2018. So you might get to see some sneak peeks at that. I don't know, not necessarily in this stream, but on the Discord or something we might
I think PI was the only one who got to see that so far.
Okay,
but that's their little tidbit. But you'll be able to see that once it's kind of a little bit more complete. Once I get the animations and all of that, we'll probably do a little spotlight of them. We've also got the Know Your Nodes economic node type articles out. So if you want to check that out, you definitely want to go get all the nitty gritty details of that on there. We also have divine nodes coming up soon. So keep your mind on that.
Divine.
We also put out a lore of the hippogriff. So if you're interested in the hippogriff and seeing how kind of like our bestiary stuff is going to work, because you can see that or animal husbandry is going to work, because that creature is different than the
it has the hind body of a horse and the forward body of a griffin
instead of a cat.
Wait,
what
Doesn't it?
Eagle. That's the forward body.
Eagle. That's right.
3 animals. It'd be real weird there.
I think a lot of people thought that the hippogriff was the griffin, and we're like, no, they're 2 different things. And people are like,
Yeah.
So it's kind of giving you an update on those things. So we'll be adding a lot of interesting little pieces to creatures that you're going to be seeing coming up.
People don't like that I'm on this side.
I know, it's weird. But you'll get used to it. But the problem is that otherwise people have to walk through the camera to get on the stream.
I'm blinking twice.
Just kidding. We also fixed the summer shop images, so if you were seeing those were weird on the shop, those are all fixed now. And the last thing that I have for a quick update for you all is the Pilgrimage of the Diviner Cosmetics. We'll be swapping over on June 5th for the Nakua Cosmetics. So that's all I got. So tossing it over to Stephen, give us that studio update, all the goodies.
Yeah, we're continuing to have a very successful hiring rounds going forward. I believe we have 7 new engineers starting between now and July 1st.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great because they're all seniors.
Yep, they all have real good, deep MMO experience.
Yes,
I won't have their images and their stuff for the creative director's letter that's coming up, but I do have a group of other 7 people. I think it ended up being 5 because 2 people didn't actually remember that it was photo day. I even sent out a meeting right before.
They don't have photos. They don't exist.
we continue to grow. And keep spreading the word on social media if you want to about Ashes of Creation, the project, the company, Intrepid Studios, and direct people to intrepidstudios.com, your favorite developers. I'm not ashamed to say that. We are absolutely always looking for talent. And
we have our job listings up there, so if you know anybody who's looking, and if there's somebody who's really talented and there isn't a job that's listed there, you can have them email us as well.
Yeah,
jobs@intrepidstudio.com.
Yeah. So things are going really good. It's turning into a little bit of a sweatshop here at the studios.
Just a little bit.
Saying that, I'm like, don't say that.
Well, you know, we don't have corners anymore.
We don't have a couch anymore.
We don't have a couch.
We're losing our second meeting space, which is like
yes,
needed,
yes. So it's getting a little tight, but progress is being made in the interim for a new studio, so that's good.
I got to finally see what that.
Oh yes,
that's
good. Yeah, the floor plan and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's turning out well. Yeah, we're doing good. Everything's moving forward. We have some announcements that we'll be making over the next probably month or so.
Yeah.
I think so. Stay tuned for that.
I like that he looks at me like,
Yes.
Well,
is
she
that
is
okay?
The marketing lead. So that's that. And then also, I think we have a newsletter that's coming out, don't
Yeah, we have a newsletter that's coming out. We have a creative director's letter that's coming out. We've got a few other things that we were probably going to be chatting about. So keep that all in mind. We've got some good stuff. We're
Always stay
excited.
tuned.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to come out of us.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I guess let's go right into design stuff then. So first, run us through what design has been working on as a whole. Like,
Well,
give us the.
before we get into that, let's make sure that we preface the fact that
this is part of the new thing.
This is why
we're
Steven
doing.
is nervous about that.
Well, I'm not necessarily nervous, but
Yeah.
as we've said in the past, right, things are works in progress. If you go back, a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, and take a look at some of the early videos on YouTube, and then take a look at the most recent ones that we've released with Apocalypse or with the MMO footage over the past 6 months, you'll see there's a considerable movement changing from the art direction and the world itself, the mechanics that are present. From the first videos we've shown to the more recent ones. So keep in mind that with this new format of kind of showing you guys work in progress stuff, that there's considerable change from this point until launch. This is not an end game kind of look at stuff. This is a work in progress in the very essence of that phrase. A lot of these are first passes. They are things that you're going to see that will be changing for the better moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when we're talking about design, for instance, we're going to be showing a lot of prototype stuff, and that prototype stuff is definitely not what we're going to see in the final game. They're there to kind of give us a sense of like what buttons are we going to be pressing, how can we make something better or more interesting. We do kind of a rough first pass just to kind of get something in the game and playable, so that we can start getting data and start making decisions about things. So, the stuff you see from design especially is going to be all prototype stuff. So.
Yes.
I think generally all of our teams are, if we continue with this format, it's kind of showing you the progress of development. And so even every month when we have new people on, or we maybe have the same person come back on and they show like the next iteration of whatever it is that they're working on, you're going to see the difference between each of those things. And I think that to me sounds like a really fun thing to be able to share with you guys as a community. Not a lot of other companies do this, so it is definitely
And just to give you guys an idea with regards to from a project management standpoint, we operate on a more agile based type of system with sprints that last about 2 weeks, and traditionally at the end of those sprints, our team kind of comes together and we have what we call our sprint review, and each department kind of goes through and gives an example of what they've been working on for that past 2 weeks, and the progress that they've made or the systems that they've completed, features, artwork, whatever it is. We all come together and we show it on the big screen. Everybody gets an opportunity to kind of discuss what they did. That way the team gets kept in the loop with each other and they get to see what's going on. This isn't as raw as that type of setting, but it does bring some of those elements up to you guys to get you to see what things are being worked on.
Yeah, and the programmers just talk to us in binary the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is true.
I actually make like an Excel
1100,
or an Excel. I make like a little PowerPoint for ours because ours are like, it's not much for me.
Words.
Yeah, words. I'm like, here are words. So yeah, with that preface, talk to us about what the design team as a whole has been working on, and then we'll get into the little bits and pieces of things that you are wanting to share with the audience.
Yeah, so as a whole, as we kind of walk towards the last 10% of Apocalypse, we've been generally working on prototyping a bunch of abilities for both the MMO and Castle Siege. We have also retooled the melee combat system in APOC entirely. So one of the big problems that we had with it is that it's very floaty. It kind of feels slap fighty. And so we wanted to kind of dig down, make it a little bit grittier, make it a little bit heavier, make sure that our weapons have real impact, because it's something that we're doing that's different than most other battle royales out there.
Right. Or just the combat in general, right? Part of the big aspect of design and moving into, the Apocalypse mode was that combat was a central focus for them, and design logs that you receive from players actually experiencing the combat that we've created. And we know, I mean, obviously we knew, there needs to be changes that are made for the MMORPG, but from an action standpoint, we wanted it to feel substantial when you impacted a player, when you swiped with a melee weapon, something that was actually feeling cohesive and not just a, player floating around with legs and then swing, 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 right?
Also, so you get the feedback, as the player being hit, that kind of thing, on top of the player being taking the action, right?
Right. So we've been doing a lot of work on that side. We've also been doing a lot of work on the data side, pulling out logs, making changes based on kind of the data we get from that. We've been super busy. We also doubled our team size for design. We've got a bunch of new faces on that side. And
a great experience.
Yeah. No, it's been fantastic.
The other big thing that I think design has really been focusing on is some of the objective gameplay that's going to be present in castle sieges and other type of objective-based battlegrounds in the MMORPG that we've talked about in the past in our design features. Having those systems, be able to take over a control point with proximity-based, players, being able to channel on, a castle siege's final relic, being able to kind of utilize those systems from an objective-based gameplay to kind of shore up the end gameplay of those systems, right?
Mm-hmm. And those actually give you objectives for quests and things of that sort.
Oh yeah. All these systems are super modular. I mean, that's how we've built them, is so that we can take them from one piece, change a few things, and use them in another piece. So once we have a system, basically we can apply that system to just about anything. And so it's a great. We're basically getting our toolbox set up so that as we start moving forward on the alpha side of things, we can just grab all those things and start implementing really quickly.
Right. The big push, and we can actually probably roll video as we're kind of chatting about this.
So the first thing that we're going to show is the root motion animations.
Yeah. So we moved from sort of like a split body weapon system to having a full body root motion where the animation's basically driving the player's movement. And so what that does is it kind of gives you that sense that you are carrying a weapon and that weapon has weight and that your momentum is driving you forward. All of those things kind of help to give that sense that you are in the game rather than on top of the game, which is kind of how the system felt before. You'll see that we also have some new impact effects and a little bit of camera shake there to kind of really highlight the fact that you are making contact with this other player.
Right. And all of this goes towards, as we begin to implement kind of the hybrid combat system in Ashes of Creation, the MMORPG, we want to take into account some of the designs that we have for weapon progression, allowing players to kind of dictate certain types of skills and or passive abilities that might be present on weapons. Some of those abilities might be control effects on the opponent that you're impacting. If you make a successful strike, there's an opportunity to put a CC effect on the opponent or a staggered condition. That way the person can't just get away from you very easily, and there's actually some capability on the melee side.
Right. And then, so that's the root motion. Hopefully you can kind of see the difference if you paid attention to some of our other APOC videos. The difference is pretty palpable and it feels a lot better. So I'm super stoked about it. We're still doing, like I said, a lot of prototyping on this, but we're getting that system finalized. And so, then it'll be up to animation to kind of bring up those effects and really make them pop.
Right, absolutely. And then the great thing about Apocalypse prior to the MMORPG is that we get feedback from the player base, from the community on this type of interaction of melee combat in a more controlled setting, and then we get to prototype and change based on that type of feedback as we've done already, right?
Yep, and we can just steal all that stuff and put it in the MMO.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think
we're gonna have to steal it. It's literally
it's ours.
Yeah. Once we get to that point, we're able to share that with everybody. I think that's gonna be exciting to be able to do another playtest with everybody.
Yep.
And I know that the designers have been really having a good time with testing out all the new animations and setting up those with all the different weapon types. What do you think has been the most challenging aspect of that?
Well, I think, from a technical standpoint, the most challenging thing is the movement of the character with the root motion. We had to do some really kind of clever acrobatic things in order to make that work because the server does not appreciate the animation moving the character, and so we have to kind of run both of those things in tandem and have the movement happen on the server while the animation's happening on the client. And so there is, a lot of interesting technical problems with that in order to reduce the sense of lag and make sure that this stuff feels really responsive and rapid. And I'm sorry for snapping, but but that certainly was kind of the hardest thing to wrap my head around, because in a single player game, root motion is relatively straightforward, but when you're dealing with server client kind of architecture, it gets a lot more complicated.
And it's important to note, like, root motion, and when we talk about impact and control effects or stagger conditions on the opponents that get struck by these melee weapons, we're not talking about a lockdown or where it's cumbersome or doesn't feel good for the player. We want to make sure that our polish for this type of combat is reflective of not locking characters in place. We want there to be high mobility. We want there to be the availability to get out of combat as well, but it needs to be tactical in that sense, right?
You really need to be thinking about your actions, and that's what we want players to do. Being locked down sucks because you're not actually playing the game anymore, right? Like, you have been removed from the game. Right. It's not fun.
No, that is not fun.
And so it's more about, control and positioning and making sure that you know what your character is going to do when you hit, and that you know what your character is going to do when you do get hit. So all those things are things to consider when you're playing the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you have another video for us. We have a new effects person who has joined the team, and he's been making some updates on things, which is exciting.
That's Jim Sanders' work. He is a phenomenal artist, and he has also a very sharp technical mind. And so he's been able to both improve the kind of fidelity of our effects, give them a unified look, and also improve their performance. So, you'll see that some of these abilities here will be darkness, or the miasma arrow, and you'll see the tentacles coming out.
Yeah.
And this effect looks so much better than our previous effect. And yet it is far more optimized.
Yes, it is far more optimized. And not only that, but these effects, again, are kind of first pass. They're still going to get additional passes before the MMORPG, where we'll take into consideration, in an MMORPG you're going to have potentially 500 players on the battlefield casting these types of effects, and we don't want them to be very explosive in that sense, or overwhelming. Exactly. Not only to take into account that the way we're structuring our effects is going to have some scalability on the client side, that they can scale down these effects if they want to as well. So that's something important to note.
Do you want to talk about that one specifically? Because it shows it's like a beacon on
something. So this is part of the Marked Wand. If you guys have played Apocalypse when we were in beta or alpha, the effect is basically a mark that allows you to see the player that you've targeted from across the map, basically. And before, it was this giant column of yellow light. It was super cardy. It read well, but it also didn't have a lot of personality. And now we kind of get that sense of, a divine light coming down and hitting the player. This is also right here. What you're seeing is part of the intro when you drop in. We know that our previous effects there weren't quite up to par, and this is Jim's first pass of kind of cleaning that up and making this whole experience tell a story, as opposed to just being this giant portal that you're kind of sort of falling out of. And this is, you're actually coming through the portal, you are shooting into the map, and then eventually your comet breaks up and you turn into your griffin form.
Yes, when you jump out of that.
Yeah.
So so a lot of that stuff is kind of what design has been working on. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah.
So anything else you want to share with us before we swap on over to our next person?
I think that's me.
Okay, I have a special treat for you all. Everybody has been asking me to get Michael Bacon back on, and guess what? You're gonna get some bacon.
You're gonna get some bacon. Bye, guys. I'll be back in a little bit.
Thank you so much. And Bacon is going to be talking to us about the environment team and what they've been up to and all of that jazz.
Welcome, Bacon!
Now it's a party.
Whoa! Did you bring bacon with you? Oh, did you bring candy?
Oh, candy.
Heck yeah!
There's always room for bacon.
I'm sick today, so.
I have cough drops.
Oh,
No.
I have some in my
Who
bowl.
needs cough drops when you have Jolly
actually
Ranchers?
cough drops.
This is
I have
great.
cough
Jolly
drops in that bowl
Ranchers.
on my desk if you do actually need
okay.
some.
These are the
Oh,
best
thank you.
cough drops.
I have like my mom bowl. It basically has like allergy medicine, everything you need in there. So first, introduce yourself for people who maybe don't know who you are.
Who doesn't know who I am?
I know. People should. If they don't, they should. And come closer.
Oh, okay.
Come closer.
Hello,
Get all
hello.
up in the scene.
All right. Well, I guess I'm Michael Bacon, and I'm lead environment dude.
Lead environment. We should
lead
change the
environment
title
dude.
to lead environment dude.
Lead environment dude.
Oh, you have a little title thing.
Yeah, I made
Yay!
titles for everyone.
Okay, cool.
Yes, I'm rocking the Sean Bean haircut.
Nice.
Now, so yeah, right before he gets his head chopped off.
Oh,
So
spoilers!
spoiler. Oh, so, that was season 1. Who doesn't know that?
Spoilers!
Okay, so Bacon, tell us a little bit about what the environment team has been up to.
We're like basically raging the war on 3 fronts. So yeah, so we got like the MMO, and then we have both Castle Siege and APOC that we're working on. So yeah, just a lot of development work. It's just working on the tool stuff. We've been making a lot of progress with that, getting all our construction tools and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we showed some Dev Diaries videos on those things, so if you haven't gotten to check those out, definitely check them out. They're on our Ashes of Creation YouTube channel.
Yeah, so that, a lot of refinements, to APOC as, we move forward as we're starting to move towards launching that thing. And, yeah, I mean, just, God, so it's hard to wrap my head around like any one particular thing.
You can bracket them into specific categories if you want.
Gotcha. Okay, so like we did recently we did like an erosion pass, which actually put a lot of new detail, into the terrains and things, which is was really cool.
Yeah, talk about how that erosion pass really in the MMORPG is going to just bring the ground, the leveling that's on the ground, and make it more realistic, right?
Well, yeah, because like what we had before was like lumpy, and it was
Right.
like the standard 1990s kind of terrain looking thing. So yeah, this thing actually integrates a lot of detail into like cliff faces and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah,
just makes
it looks really
a
beautiful.
lot more detailed.
And it gives some really cool kind of like gameplay aspects. I probably shouldn't have eaten this Jolly Rancher. I'm sorry. It gives some really cool gameplay aspects because it presents the players with unique terrain that they can utilize in a tactical sense for combat, cover, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So the tech that you guys have been kind of creating, I think Devin's been working on it a lot too. Applied in APOC, but that's the testing ground for when it gets moved into the MMORPG map.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah, it'll be a lot more refined than the MMO. So kind of doing that. We got that approved.
And you guys have worked on some river pass stuff. I saw that.
Yeah,
you guys
rivers,
worked on, which is
oceans,
cool.
the beach stuff, which is still kind of a work in progress, but it's looking really great. Devin's been, kind of hitting that and doing a really good job on that front. And the new grass stuff, which we'll show today, which is really cool. And I mean, just I don't know, there's a lot of stuff, Castle Siege stuff, the whole destruction system.
Yeah. So we're not at the point yet that we're going to share video of the destruction stuff yet. But
Yeah,
I
but I
think
mean,
we're getting close,
That's
right?
what, yeah,
we're
that's
getting
what
close.
we're getting a lot closer
Yeah.
with those. So Nate, our technical guy, has been doing a great job, sort of refining some
What
of
have
that
you
stuff.
found has been like the thing that has been exciting in working on castle destruction?
Well,
and stuff?
destruction's always exciting.
Yeah. Besides just blowing things
That's
up.
right.
I mean, it's like blowing stuff. Everybody knows me. Come on, man, loosen up a little bit.
And that's part of one of the Dev Diary videos as well, right? The destruction stuff.
That'll be later down the line, but yes, it is one of the
Cool.
it is one of the topics we'll be covering.
Well, the thing that's cool about that is like we initially talked about how we would do it, and it was like, oh, take this giant piece of mesh and then kind of have it damage states and that kind of thing, and worked its way into a point where we can do it more dynamically. It's not completely dynamic because like on a server, if you shoot the wall, it'll fall backwards and one player and fall forward on the other player. So there's some kind of magic and some some tech that we had to implement to try to get that to work
magic.
right. But but it's coming along. It's looking good. So
Yeah,
I'm very excited about that.
We can probably play some of the
so
building stuff.
Let's first play.
Whatever you want.
I think our first video that we have is the oceans and the waves and the grass details. So we're showing that, and we can kind of talk over this.
Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. So like I said, there's the kind of ocean beach shader. That's kind of still a work in progress, but yeah, we got those waves are kind of coming in. We got the sand surface. Goes from like a wet, shiny,
dry,
So
it
dry.
looks very realistic.
And
It's so cool.
I mean, the key point here when you guys are looking at this video is this is all in game. Okay, right now this is in the APOC level. But again, the APOC and the MMO are synonymous. They are the same.
Yeah, all this tech is stuff that we're it's all being moved over.
Absolutely.
I mean, technically we are using it in the MMO. It's just
Right.
But right now we're showcasing it in.
And this is some grass stuff. I think that it was Tad working on the grass stuff. Or, yeah.
Yeah, Tad's
the rolling wind in the grass. I love that.
Yeah, so you got like the regular
love
grass
the
motion that he
ocean
put
stuff.
together, and then he basically put like this sort of pulse wave that kind of runs through it, kind of like a big kind of wind wave that's blowing through it. And
I noticed people saying, what's the type of rig we'll need to run this at this type of beauty? The great thing about UE4 and what's being done from an optimization standpoint on the environment team is that this stuff will run on, you don't need a supercomputer to run this stuff and look this good. I mean, it is something that...
Well, Tad's grass is like actually way more optimized than what we had
The
in
previous
before.
grass. Yeah, exactly.
It's like there's not a lot of alpha.
Looks better and
overdrive.
performs better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, so I mean, part of what you're seeing here in this level is really us fine tuning the environment team, fine tuning
a lot of us
all of
been
this
doing
stuff. And the great thing is, when you have a team that's creating an MMORPG from scratch, you fine tune this stuff in the MMO. We get to fine tune it in APOC, and it's done for the MMO.
Yeah. That's the thing that's been kind of weird because like we're breaking ground in the MMO, and then we're on the tail end refining stuff, and on APOC it's coming out. But
everything goes.
Then everything that we've refined in APOC gets moved over, to the MMO. So
and it also makes for a really good experience in our alphas. Like we're moving towards Alpha 1 with the MMO. You guys are building the Alpha world kind of map.
Mm-hmm.
And traditionally in some alphas that you'll see on other projects, they're very barren from a visual standpoint, right? Because they're essentially testing core systems, they're standing up those core systems, and they don't have the time necessarily to put towards establishing a visual environment and the character assets being complete. The great thing about what is being done for our Alpha 1 is that visually it will be up to a par that is respectable and will be beautiful for players to participate in that Alpha 1. And that's kind of the experience we want to give players. We want you to not just experience the core systems, which are being worked on by engineering and design, but also allow the head start for the environment team, the character team, to get in there and make stuff beautiful for you so that when you do play, that immersive quality, which is such an important aspect of an MMORPG, is present at every stage of testing.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you like stand in a location, you're like, I just want to live here. Can I live here? Is that your dream? Is that someone
That's my dream.
sees a place that you created and they're like, I love this place so much, I wish I could be here.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So far, what has been your favorite thing to work on in the environments?
Oh, my favorite thing, like me specifically.
Yeah.
Destruction.
The destruction. It goes back to the destruction.
No, I like.
We know what you're about now.
No, just creating worlds and just spelling that out. I've been having a lot of fun working with Steven and the concept art. Kind of spelling out the the design and look of the world. We've been doing a lot of work with the conceptual stuff, especially with the structures and things for all the different races.
And trying to make something new and different, which is, I think, a great segue to our next video from you all, which we're going to talk over. But if you want to kind of walk us through what all of this is.
So this is like the concept stuff that we've been working, or had been working on for, what is this, Empyrean Elf stuff? So we have the Pyrian stuff, which
this
was
is Empyrean.
kind of all over APOC, and then this is kind of moving into the Empyrean kind of race. So these are this kind of structures going from the Node 1 kind of tent level all the way up to kind of the Metropolis, kind of some of the structures that you'll see in the game from there.
And you guys have seen in a previous developer diary with Devin, the building tool that's going to be utilized to kind of create a lot of these different structures.
Yeah, we're going to put that to the test.
We're going to put, exactly. I was going to say,
I don't think he built it to do exactly what some of this stuff does.
We're really going to be stressing that to see, what amount of modularity it can accommodate in these types of concept designs.
Especially with the different curvatures and changes. I think one of those things that people had said was that when Devin was showcasing the tool, that he was only showing like boxy things. But we can make things that are more curved and
it just takes like a lot more pre-planning.
Yes.
But like some of the long sweep on that building from the
It's
rooftop
gorgeous, yeah.
That's
on
unique.
the left, that will be particularly difficult to do with.
Yes, I mean, I think from your guys' standpoint, at least with the tool, you're going to categorize, the types of features and slopes and architectures that are present in these buildings in a way that makes sense from a modular standpoint, being able to accommodate as much as possible. And some of these concepts might adapt in order to accommodate that.
Of course, there'll be
obviously.
a lot of give and take.
But the important thing for you guys to know when you're looking at these types of concepts and buildings that you're seeing on 2D representation is take a look at the quality of environments that we have already created in game and now project what is going to be created from these concepts and how that's going to look. The intent behind Ashes of Creation is to create a visually stunning world. And part of that visual stunningness is really, I don't even know if that's a word, stunningness.
Stunningness.
Is to have architecture that reflects the different cultures. I mean, we have 9 different cultures in Ashes. So there is a wide variety of architectural influences that go into creating these different buildings.
Well, that's been the key, and some of the challenges is like we have two different types of races, like for how do I say this?
Per like
subtype, so you got humans, elves, and they've got the split off races,
Yeah.
right? So it's like you want to make them different, but yet still have a footing, like they still kind of fit within the same world as their counterpart. And so these guys right here, which is the Nikua dwarves. And these have actually been super challenging because they're kind of islander.
We were discussing this because we were chatting about it whenever I came by your desk, and you were saying how there's some parts that just aren't quite there sometimes.
Yeah, these ones are still kind of in development. Yeah. We're still kind of injecting more. I think we're injecting more of the dwarven classic, kind of motifs into some of the stuff, but still being able to organically work, look like it works together. So, so I think they're a little bit more kind of into the native, kind of side of things, islander kind of side of things right now, or you kind of pull them just a little bit more towards the dwarven. But I mean, the structures that he did look really interesting and really cool. So.
I'm excited to see those. So I think whenever we're able to show those in kind of the tool that Devin was making, being able to see all of that stuff.
And I think the thing in particular with that race is, so you got the tents and stuff, or the initial smaller structures in Node 1, but then what does that type of stuff look like when it reaches Metropolis? So that's been kind of challenging as far as taking what they have, which is a very islander look, and and this is a gigantic Metropolis, you'd think of city-esque. But I think and
that is where you're finding the challenge to be is thinking about the Metropolis version of that.
Yeah,
exactly. You've got the tents down, but then when it comes
I think it's just the progression of the architecture, right? I mean, there is a definitive moment between village assets and city assets.
Exactly.
And that transition is oftentimes difficult to maintain while keeping the same type of influence that was present in the early stages.
Yeah, exactly.
So as the concept art is being directed, you want to make sure that it is coherent, it is cohesive, and players will be able to tell throughout each stage what culture is being represented.
Yeah, and then but then at the same time, on a balancing standpoint, they still got to look like they can square off with some of the other races. You know what I mean? So you got the Empyreans or something, and their Metropolis is going to be really stone and
exactly.
And you think that
if they're competing against
they're competing against each other. You think that their Metropolis versus the
and also trying to make it performant and optimized in the sense that each of these races, we don't want to have a vast library of materials and shaders that have to be represented every time, because these nodes can pop up anywhere in an area, right? And making sure that there's consistency there as well from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, performance.
Performance.
There's a lot that goes into the environment art that I don't think everyone always understands or sees.
It's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole of vast technical problems.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think what's funny to me is a lot of people think an environment artist is just an artist. I'm like, no, they need to understand programming to a certain level as well. So it's
involved with it as well.
Especially Bacon. Bacon's not just an artist; he's a Renaissance man.
A Renaissance man. What does that mean?
That means that you have skills in many areas, like a Da Vinci.
A Da Vinci.
Yeah, you're a musical dude. You're an artist.
Pouring it on too much, man.
You do
videography. Come on, that's one of the cool things about Bacon.
Yeah, I just like getting my hands on a lot of stuff. So
yes,
yeah, this makes this job particularly fun and and cool because because we wear a lot of hats, and
Yeah, I think that is the thing about working with a smaller team too, is you get to do a lot of fun things. Sometimes you can get stuck with doing one job where you're just doing it every day and it gets monotonous. But like, I feel like we get the variety of choosing what we want to do. And
but I mean the whole team's like that. Like especially the environment team. I mean Tad was working on the character shader stuff, for instance. And helping him out with that. Because he's very technical minded.
Yeah, even helping other departments for sure.
Yeah, that guy's mad skills in the technical department. So very, very cool to be working with him. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here. I know it took a little bit of convincing to get Bacon to come on the stream, but we appreciate it, and the community appreciates it.
I can deal with it. It's fun.
No.
It's fun to hang with
the Jolly Ranchers.
Right there we go.
Yay!
Everybody.
He's just doing it on purpose now.
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna swap over. We're gonna bring on our character team representative here.
Yay!
Hey!
Brad Constantine, which is also a multifaceted, talented individual.
Yes.
Very much so.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Bacon.
All right.
Hey, good job, man. How do you follow Bacon?
I
There's no
don't
way
know.
to do that. It's all downhill from here.
Well, come on in.
Do I get a red one?
Yeah, you can.
The goal is a
There's
red
a great
tongue by
one
the
over
end
here.
of this thing.
It's gonna be hard to talk if you have that stuff.
No.
Yeah, no.
No, always.
difficult.
He's like, no. Yeah.
But it tastes so good.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks
It's
for
so
coming on.
great to actually be able to stop working and come down
Brad-
and talk about
Brad
what
has
we're
wanted
doing.
to be on a
Well,
live
is your
stream
chain
forever.
still attached?
My chain. Yes. It's so heavy.
It's still.
First, introduce yourself for people who might not know who you are.
My name is Brad Constantine, and I'm a senior artist here at Intrepid on the character team. Senior meaning I'm really old.
No, stop.
You have a lot
So-
of experience as an animator.
I do. This is
Yeah.
my 8th MMO.
I know.
Right, so I've been around
You've
the
been
block
through
a couple of
the
times.
ropes
I have.
on some of the previous projects.
Right, and I gotta say that this project, out of all of those MMOs that I've worked on, this has got to be the coolest one that I've worked on.
That's pretty awesome.
You know, at the beginning of this, Steven came to us and we're setting up the character team, and we're saying, okay, Steven, what do you want? And he says, I want everything.
That sounds about right.
Well, that's just my negotiating starting point.
No pressure.
Right? Yeah, you got to start at the top so that you end up where you want, right?
Exactly. So we're trying to do that. We're trying to give you everything that you want. Steven's vision is so clear and so precise that it's very easy to go down that road.
Well, we have a clear vision, and part of the character team and the team in general is that we all share this vision for the project, right? We have a passion for it. A lot of people have done MMOs in the past, so they've been through the type of challenges that we're going to be facing on this project and have faced on this project so far. So it's great to have that experience to kind of address those issues and come out the other end with some success.
Well, I can understand from your perspective too. I've worked on a lot of teams where you have a creative director who maybe isn't very good at creative directing, and you're in a situation where you're like, what is the vision? And I don't understand it. Whereas here we really do understand it, because we all want it to as players. So I think that's the exciting part about it.
Well, I find the players find that too, that in the industry in general, the MMO genre, there is a real lack of vision. Everything sort of became repetitive and stale.
Yeah.
And how do you
Move it up.
Revamp it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, talk to us a little bit about what the character team has been working on recently, or
So-
just in general, I guess.
So the character team involves a whole lot of different disciplines, right? So we're talking everything from creating characters to doing the meshes, we're doing the rigging, the skinning, the animation, all of that. That's all encompassed under the character artist umbrella. So there's a lot going on all fronts. Just like Bacon said, everything from fixing up the combat to modeling and designing new mounts and weapons and things, figuring out stuff under the hood, all of the technical things, how we're going to go down the road of character customization and all of that great stuff.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I'm
sorry.
excited.
No, everything happening at one time.
Yeah, and part of a big component for the character team, not just from concept to model to rig to animation to effects to whatever, is that an MMO is a very large world, It has a lot of different pieces, and it has a lot of population that needs to be present in order to make it engaging and diverse and something you want to explore. So, part of one of the big tasks that the character team has is kind of categorizing creatures and NPCs and races into compartmentalized groups that can share as much as possible without looking the same across the board. We want it to look visually diverse, but share a lot of the core work that goes into creating these different lines of creatures and or players, right? And that's a difficult task, but the great thing about having experience on MMOs in the past is this isn't your first rodeo, and this is how things are traditionally done in order to create successfully an MMORPG.
And I think to give an example of what Steven's saying, for example, on the simplest side of that would be like, you have a horse, right? You can make a zebra from a horse, that kind of thing. So being able to create lots of different types of creatures based on like a base model of a creature and share some of those animations so that we can move forward much faster and quicker.
That's true. With a world as large as ours is going to be, and with as many creatures and different characters that you're going to run into and deal with, we have to find ways of making it all work, making it all run. We can't just do anything that we want to do, right? So there's a huge technical...
Well, we can. Just how long it's going to take us.
Right. So on our end, on the character end, there's a lot of fakery going on a professional level. So meaning that everything that you see on the screen in the course of the game is a combination of a lot of different technical things all going on at once. For example, so once the character gets a certain distance away from you, we're going to start swapping out that character with smaller versions, levels of detail and that sort of thing. All sorts of technical stuff that's going on under the hood. Mm-hmm. We're doing all kinds of work on iterating on the new combat with the new root motion stuff going forward, which is great as an animator because it frees us up to be able to do all kinds of cool dynamic things that you see in like single player games and that sort of thing.
And a lot of so much of what you guys are working on with regards to that combat is basically establishing the root animations that are present on a character model, right? I mean, these are diverse animations that are going to be present for the characters in the MMORPG, and it's going to have a wide range of applicability, movement, directions, all that stuff that's present for players to kind of utilize.
It's got to be fun. It's got to be cool, right? It's got to be replayable, right? It's something that you want to do every day. Yeah. And that's also its own challenge too, is finding a movement style and a motion style that works for that long-term replayability. I've worked on a lot of MMOs, and when you're spending hours and hours and hours inside a game or whatever, it's very important that the visual presentation that you get is not jarring, disturbing, doesn't make you tired and all that kind of thing. Yeah. All sorts of little things that you wouldn't normally think of with other types of games become a real challenge in MMO.
We have some videos,
I
think,
that's
right?
just going to transition.
Woohoo, we could show stuff?
Yeah.
We never get
First
to show
thing
stuff.
we're going to show is the Dawnbreaker, and I think Steven actually leaked a little leak of this.
Yeah, I think this is like last week or the week before. A little leak of the Dawnbreaker. That's something that one of our character artists, Jinsey, was working on.
Shout out to Jinsey.
Shout
Good
out
job.
to Jinsey.
Yay. She's awesome.
So the Dawnbreaker, as you guys know, is a Braver of Worlds mount. So you're starting to see the pipeline now incorporating some creation of the Kickstarter assets. These are, again, work in progress. These are first passes, but you can kind of see it's,
Butterfly wings.
It's
awesome.
The wings might be moving a little fast there.
Butterfly's wings move pretty fast.
They do.
But that's the whole point of iteration, is
Exactly.
you create something, you get it into the game, you look at it, you move it around, you play with it, and then you make a lot of notes. And then you go back and you iterate and make it better and better and better.
Yep. He's kind of scary, but in an awesome way.
Yeah.
I love the concept art of him where he's he's on top of a building holding onto it. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
He looks so sweet.
And this is absolutely first pass too.
Yes.
Very important that you guys realize that the animation for an MMO is a very iterative process.
Even the materials, I think, are still being
The materials need to be
updated and stuff
adjusted
like
a little
that,
bit, yes. And there's still effects that get added to the wing. There's some bioluminescence that we're going to put. Very subtle, but it will be on the wings, and maybe some particle effects.
Dust. Kind of like, when you see a moth and they have that little dust.
I love that stuff. That kind of detail. And
I know Jim's been trying to figure out how he wants to do that. And you guys have been trying to work together on what you need to do as an animator in order to make that something that a FX person can attach to it. Right?
Agree. We all work together. You know, we all sit down with design. We sit down with the effects people, and that's the benefit of having such a small, talented team, is that we can sit down and sort of bang our heads together, and from our collective experience, come up with something awesome.
Yeah, so we've got some more videos for you all. We have some weapon variants that we're going to show. So you might have seen some of these on, I think the video that we had with
These
Carson,
are awesome.
which I think are just gorgeous. But now these are like closer up shots so that you can actually see each of them and the differences between them and the different modeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of a lot of variety that we want to have present in the weapons and armors that are available to players, so that they have a distinct and unique look. I know, in a lot of MMOs that I've played, there's kind of a status quo of weaponry that you're expected to have at each level, and there's the best in slot, and the best in slot always looks the same, so you know what a person has. Here we can have some variance so that you get the general idea of what another player will have, at least from a threat assessment standpoint or understanding the character's build out. But at the same time, there are some unique aspects that we can play with to give that character more customization opportunity with their weapon. So you're seeing that present in APOC first, but in the MMORPG, the idea stays the same. There is a diversity that players will have the opportunity, as we spoke about in our last developer diary with Carson, players will have the opportunity to distinguish their particular build and yet still have the same quote-unquote item per se. So giving that kind of cosmetic, dials to the players to uniquely define their appearance is something that we really think is important to an RPG aspect of the MMO.
Yeah, and he's been having so much fun making these. I know that every time I walk up there, he's always just like, this is my dream. I'm living my dream right now.
Yeah.
I know I am. I jump out of bed every day to come do this.
And the important thing, the other important thing about this type of diversity and customization that's available to players is that not everybody likes the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is true in life, it is true in games. So at the end of the day, having this range of customization really allows the players to define their own their own desires, right? And it may not appeal to everybody, but that's why we want to have a wide variety so that players can have the opportunity to find what's right for them.
These are just amazing looking. Shout out to Carson for these. These are just fantastic.
Yes, well done,
Yeah.
Carson.
Wow.
They look great.
I want to play this game right now.
When you're looking at creating, weaponry like this, and I guess this can be to Steven too, and you're trying to make that diversity, what is it that you think is going to make people excited to see that? Like,
Well, when for these weapon sets in particular, these were originally concepted by Jeff Deliere, and when I was sitting with Jeff and he's giving me, different silhouettes of the weapon types, and you can kind of see the components that arc out from the core piece of that weapon. Defining, I think, a variety there is really about finding what are opposites of each other, right? You want to kind of represent unique aspects of a weapon across the board and make sure that they differ from each other and not just have the slight variance. So that's why you see some of these crossbows, they have kind of like feathery aspects to them, and the other ones don't. They have more of a jagged edge on the hilt of the weapon. I think that's an important part, defining in concept first, and that way that Carson can work from a clear and defined kind of representation of what direction these different weapon types will have.
and I think something to note too is that this is only just one style, right? There's going to be a variety of different types.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
weapons.
Yeah,
'Cause I think
absolutely.
We've gotten a lot of people who are asking for like a different types
Well,
of like medieval or Asian style.
So it's
armor
important to
and
note
weaponry.
that, as you guys are seeing a lot of these assets, right? And all of these weapons you're seeing, these are in-game assets, right? These are completed models.
Yep.
They are right now being used in Apocalypse and our internal testing and being insured there. So the important thing about this process is that there is a crap ton of art. There is a crap ton of assets that need to be created to make an MMO feel diverse and fulfilling for the players to experience. And all of those assets require first having set up a pipeline from the artist's perspective so that they can make sure that not each asset is going to take as long as the next one, that they can kind of cut down that time and share as much as possible, get the process down and understood, and they can move through the master asset list that needs to be created for the initial launch of the MMORPG and get it done in a timely manner so that the product comes out. And as each of these sets are being completed by Carson and the character team, that is becoming more defined, more finite, more kind of optimized in a sense, so that the later down the road, as we get into the big master asset list, that time is not as ballooned as the initial assets.
Yeah, and they've been doing a lot of optimization lately. I know that they've done many passes on these in order to make sure that even performance is going to be really smooth for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I think we had a question in chat requesting what kind of tools you use to create animation specifically.
Okay, we use two different 3D programs to do our animation. Our primary program is a program called Motion Builder by Autodesk. They also create Maya. So Motion Builder is a program that was developed primarily to modify and work motion capture data, but we find that it has an excellent suite of keyframe animation tools, so we use that as our primary character animation thing. Yeah, it's a fantastic program.
Yeah, and I, even when Carson was on his video, he was talking about how he just loves all the tools that he gets to use. It's almost for him like he actually gets to, model almost like as if he's doing like it in real life, which is really cool.
It's great. And in using Unreal Engine 4 too, there's a lot of direct integration with some of these tools too. So for example, I can work on something in Maya, I can take it right into Motion Builder without having to close out of Maya and then reopen the other program. Then I can take something from Motion Builder right into UE4, I can test it, then go back into the animation program, iterate on it, test it again, repeat.
Yeah. And you've heard me in the past, I've always been a big proponent of the engine, Unreal Engine, because, as Brad just described, there's a lot of integration with third-party software that is necessary for the construction of these types of large games. I mean, if we had to create tools ourselves, this would be a much longer process, but there are we do have to create a lot of tools ourselves. Yeah. But there are also out-of-the-box tools that help to kind of move the production forward, at least from an animation standpoint, an environment team standpoint. These types of things are present in the engine by default. Yes, they can have some, catering and unique aspects that we can then apply to them, but that's another great aspect of Unreal Engine is that it's highly customizable.
It really is, and it's great. And just about anything that you would need to learn in Unreal Engine, you can find on sites like YouTube and other things. So it's a fantastic tool, and we're digging deep into it to find out all of the things that we can do with it, and it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think people are really liking the changes and upgrades to the different weaponry pieces.
I mean, what I would say is, from my experience as an MMORPG player in previous MMORPGs, I've always been underwhelmed by the diversity of weapons that are available in those games and or armors. And I think originally the idea behind the creation of this game is that to the character team, their kind of mission statement was, hey, we want to be as diverse and as many items as possible so that players can create their own unique representation of themselves from an RPG standpoint. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. I mean, this is a small taste of the type of weapon diversity that will be present in Ashes of Creation. And the animations themselves will also have some unique aspects to them.
And particle effects probably too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the idea here is to make a world that is so diverse you literally get lost in it.
And with that in mind,
I'm going to need a very large crate to put all of my things
right.
in.
It's very easy to forget that with all of the talented and experienced people that we have here at Intrepid, that this is still Steven's first trip down the rodeo.
Oh yeah,
to the rodeo. So we are guiding him through this process of setting up pipelines and iteration and all of this sort of thing.
The stuff I've learned in the past 3 years, I feel like it has taken more brain space than I've learned in my previous 30 years.
Well, it's one thing to make a game, right? To make an MMO and already have a studio and already have a staff and have other teams available. Say, oh, okay, we're going to get
projects to pull from.
Right, we're going to pull guys on for this or whatever.
Yes. Too, whereas here we're making everything from the ground up.
Yep.
I do want to ask a question, but this is more to you, Stephen.
Sure.
Because I think before you had said to people that, you're not looking for the giant sword that's bigger than the person
Right.
that they can't
Oversized,
carry. Like, you're
yeah.
looking for that more realism. Can you talk a little bit more about that specifically? Because people had follow-up questions on that. Cause
Yeah, no,
they
absolutely.
do kind of like the fantasticalness. That's why people play games.
Fantasticalness is fine, and we will have a lot of high fantasy aspects to the game. However, from a physics standpoint, something that, and this is just a personal taste standpoint, right? People have different opinions on this. This is highly subjective.
As a small person, I don't mind carrying
Right,
like
exactly. And I played plenty of games that were very fun and they were visually stunning and they had oversized weapons and stuff. But from my perspective, when you're playing a game and you're immersed in something, there is something called that suspension of disbelief, right?
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, your immersion factor is only as high as you can believe that you're in the game.
I gotcha.
And some components of other types of art styles don't help to suspend that disbelief. They actually make it more difficult. And I feel that one of the aspects of prop design or weapon design is that kind of oversized features I think don't make sense to me. So it makes it more difficult for me to kind of suspend that disbelief.
And where you'd like to see it, and I think this is a great transition, is more in that diversity of changing items and things like that. So the next thing that we have is the backpack. We know we showed a little taste of that on Carson's
I want a backpack.
video.
I want that in real life.
But this kind of gives you a little bit more of so you can look at all the little tiny details.
Yeah.
And this kind of goes into what you were talking about a little bit, where you want that realism of being able to, if I am, an alchemist person, maybe I carry more potions with me rather than
Right.
the other
I mean,
things, right?
a big component of the MMORPG, that half of that, acronym is RPG, role-playing game. And
Yeah.
in order to role-play, you need to be able to represent kind of what your character is doing in that world. And, part of what animation is doing is creating these sockets on the, let's say, the belt or the back that, can plug in certain types of props or items that are created by the character team like Carson. Might be a scroll tube, it might be a potion, it might be whatever. Those players will have the ability, as we've discussed in the past, will have the ability to select what they want to be represented in those sockets, and then animation will make sure that they jive well in movement.
All
and
these
as the
are gonna,
character's
the
moving.
little bottles jingling and stuff like that. Is that kind of stuff that you find really fun to animate?
Yeah, we love that kind of stuff. And
The flag,
it goes
flag.
along the same lines of Stephen wanting everything.
The look
So-
at the
so basically-
That's great.
The idea that any character can wear just about any sort of outfit and carry any weapon at any time and that sort of thing, what a wonderful thing.
And I think
Right?
Yeah.
And I think players really want that.
Absolutely.
I think the kind of game that we're making that is so hard to make
Yes.
and so challenging and everything takes so much planning and so much time,
Yep.
it's what players really want.
Absolutely.
what I want.
It's,
And part
it's,
of-
it's hard to express to people how long things really
Yes.
take to
Yes.
do,
Yes.
especially when you have to create an entire world from scratch.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at that backpack and
And
all
seeing
of
all
the
those little
things on it,
pieces, yeah.
imagine having to start designing all of those things from scratch just to design a backpack.
And that's just one backpack.
It's just one backpack.
And that's an engineering backpack, right? So we'll have a variety of different backpacks for the engineer.
So the other component that you think about when as Brad was saying, wanting everything, is you guys know this because you've been following for the past 2 years
those of
now.
you
We
who
just
have
this
been here
month,
with
right?
us
For
for-
those of you who've been with us,
Yeah.
this month actually was our 2-year anniversary from Kickstarter, May 1st. So the cool thing though is that a lot of what we talked about in the beginning is companies are unwilling, I think, sometimes to take the risk that comes along with creating such a vast and substantial game like Ashes of Creation. This is a very ambitious project. And we part of hiring the team members we have here is making sure they understand, hey, this is a very ambitious project, and this is going to be something that passion will fuel you to see complete. Right, that is an important part, and why it's been a major point for me. I keep looking at that stupid microphone. Is why it's been a major point for me when bringing on board people is that I see in their eyes the passion to complete and do a project
looks
of
in
this
your eyes.
size. Right, that's such an important aspect for me, and I know along with that we have the seniors and the talent that's present and the experience that's here. But there's a lot of stuff to get done, and it's great to have a team like Brad and the other character team and everybody else on the team that's capable of actually achieving these things and don't balk at the idea of doing a backpack like this or doing this.
Big lists don't scare me, man.
Right, exactly.
And I think the next thing that we have is an armor piece to show you all. So
Oh, cool.
Let's go.
Oh,
ahead
do
and
we have
look at
armor
that.
pieces?
Yeah. So this is one that Keith is working on, I believe.
So the important thing to know about this piece, and a lot of what you guys saw in APOC was very asymmetrical in its design, creating the asset, the armor sets themselves. But there is a wide diversity of cultures in Ashes of Creation. So there are 9 distinct cultures, and that's the major races. That doesn't even account for, the minor races that are present and will have some influences on the designs there. But this is a more traditional type of kind of plate set that is more symmetrical. This is what Keith Kovac's been working on. Keith actually being our first hire at the studio.
Employee number 1.
I think he's at the dentist right now.
Yeah, he is.
But here, there are absolutely some elements of asymmetry that are present. On the boot, on the belt strap, on the guards. But traditionally, this kind of set represents a more Western plate influence that's present. So this is the modeling of that particular armor set. And you'll see that this is broken up into many different pieces that are actually attached to the character. This can be broken down pretty significantly on an individual piece basis, and that again lends itself to creating that highly customizable aspect that players will be able to influence on their character design.
So cool. This is the coolest armor I've ever worked on.
Yeah.
I did a lot of armor skinning in the past few months, and every day I'm going, wow, this is so cool. Who does this? Who does cool skin tight, completely design armor?
Oh, yeah.
Not just a texture, right? Not just a normal map. I mean, they're actually building this geometry out on this stuff, and it's super cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Well, I think that's going to kind of wrap things up for the character team, unless you have anything last that you want to say or add.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody for their continued support. We're all here working really hard to make an awesome game.
Yes.
And thanks for letting me out of my my
you still have
cubicle.
you still have your chain on.
That's right. You know what? I'm actually really excited to go get back to the combat that I was working on.
Thank you so much.
So, all right, thanks
Brad.
guys. Bye.
Bye,
Bring
Brad.
See everybody.
Jeff back on over here, and we're going to kind of wrap things up with a little bit of a Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and toss them into the chat, and we'll try to snag them up. I know there was still some other questions in there, but hopefully you all like this. You got a little taste of what our different departments are doing on our teams. The goal would be to maybe do this with some of our other departments, kind of talking to maybe some of our other designers about specific things, talking to our programmers about specific things.
By the way, I know we're going over a little
Yes, we
bit,
are a little bit.
but I just
Stephen wants to do a Q&A.
I want to make sure we have Q&A.
Yeah.
So if you guys are okay with it, we're going to go longer than normal so that we can get some questions.
I don't think they're going to have a problem with that.
I don't think they will.
So the first question I see there is about weapon swapping. What are your guys' thoughts on weapon swapping? Can people swap weapons in combat?
So we
Has
don't
that
want
discussion been
we
done?
don't want players to be able to instantly swap their weapons in combat. There should be some time between when
the
they
MMO.
for the MMORPG. Yes. For the MMORPG, we want there to be some time between damage received or damage done before you can swap your weapon. It's not going to be substantial. It maybe will be a few seconds, but
it's one of the things. Remember that the weapon system includes a combo system that has its own skills and stuff associated with it. So not just from a gameplay perspective, but also from a technical perspective and making sure those things link together correctly. We need to make sure that those things kind of live together.
there'll be no swapping at all. Actually, when you equip the weapon, it'll burn into your hands and
Yep,
become a
and
part of
it'll
your
be-
body. And
You'll just have a blade
move around.
hand.
Yeah, exactly. Blade hand. Nice. No, I'm just
All
kidding.
right. Waiting for Toast to toss me the questions, but I'll just kind of look at some of the questions.
Toast. I smell
So
cake.
a question that we had, and this is in regards to the 10% remaining on Apocalypse and where we are on that, as far as what's left on that.
What's left on that?
Yeah.
So right now we're mainly focusing on stress testing with certain customized tools that we've created in order to really hammer account creation, hammer population on the map. Actually, I was walking by Mitch the other day and I saw him spawning thousands of
I know, it's pretty freaking cool.
characters
Yeah.
Yep, that's
around him and
And they just
getting
all
a
run
read on
around.
the
It's-
server frame
yeah.
rate and the client's frame rate. So
I can't tell you how many there were on his screen. It was like,
it was literally thousands.
yeah, my heart
There
skipped a
were,
beat.
yeah, I was like, how many
I
do you
fell in
have
love.
there? And I think he had like 3,000 character models spawned.
oh,
Yeah,
go
sorry.
on.
Go ahead. So basically, right now the back end, focusing on really stress testing, kind of the new architecting that was done in order to accommodate the number of players that we aim to receive. And I am happy to report that I keep looking at that damn thing. Excuse me.
Damn it, Steven.
I am happy to report that progress is substantial on that front. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives you a good answer. If you have follow-up questions, you can always just message me and we can figure that out. In regards to content, so a lot of people are curious about the MMO content specifically, and I know Sam has been working really hard on a lot of the story content and things of that sort, the stuff that people are actually going to like play through and get their hands on.
You're talking about story?
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to not talk about details of that, but talk about what you guys are working on in regards to that, because I think we show a lot of art and stuff of that sort, but they want to know about the content that they're going to get to play through.
Yeah, so again,
That's being worked on, but we
I
can't
think
show that.
Yeah,
really.
it's one of those things that it's still
You don't
being
wanna show it.
Yeah, we don't want to show it yet, too.
architected in terms of what's going to go where and what pieces belong to what. And as far as implementation of that stuff goes, like we've got a gigantic lore bible and we've got all this stuff kind of we're holding on to. It's more about figuring out what pieces go where, kind of the pace of everything, and then once we solve all those questions and we start we'll be able to start implementing at that point.
Right. So as the Alpha 1 map excuse me, is being laid out, from a design and population standpoint, a lot of those NPCs that contain certain story arcs or storylines, they need to be placed in areas that make sense, that they connect to, that they hook to, and that they connect with other nodes in that sense as well.
Right.
So that's a big component of that. We're not going to be releasing information on these story arcs. We will not release them until probably beta, when at that point it'll be difficult for us to even keep them under wraps. So we may give some insights
where
there.
will people see the content? Like, what kind of systems are going to be attached to that? Like, obviously doing quests and things of that sort.
Every system.
Yeah.
Every system contains it, right? Like all of the events are based around storytelling.
Yes.
All of the narrative quests are based around storytelling. All the organizational quests are based around storytelling. The game is built from a story, basically. So we want to make sure that there's a context and relevancy for all of the actions that you're doing in the game.
And even player-driven mechanics
Right.
will still have story components. There will be a reason why that player-driven mechanic is available or required of the player. So every system that's created touches story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that kind of answered your question. It's kind of one of those things where we can't really show it, because if we show it, then we're showing you all of the story. So it makes it hard. But there's lots of work being done on the content and tons.
And we still have a lot of
stories.
systems that need to be finished too. As far as the questing system is very complex. There's a lot of stuff that goes
There's
into
still
it.
certain like objective types that are being worked on too. on
Well,
the
and just
programming side, too.
the entire node interface of the quests and how they decide what NPCs to give them out to, how that decides what happens when that NPC dies in a node siege, right? Like all that stuff is still being built, and we need those in order to actually
All
start.
right, I
putting
have
them
a
in the
whole
game.
bunch of questions. Are y'all ready? So the first one is every whole. I'm not going to say his whole
Oh
name.
my God.
For the I'm not going to say the
I
name.
would-
Steve's already said the name before.
I never said it.
For-
Jeff said
I
it.
said it.
For,
Yeah,
Jeff said it. I wasn't here. This was prior to me existing on this team. For the melee sounds, will there be different sounds when hitting armor or flesh?
Yes.
Yes, that's already implemented currently.
Yep.
in
So
APOC.
we have basically material channels that we use to determine what sound gets played at any given moment. And so based on what you're hitting, you'll hear different sounds based on that.
Yeah. Our
I
next-
saw a
oh,
question
go
real quick that I
might be
want
one
to
of my
make sure to
questions.
answer. Is the referral system.
Yes.
Part of what we have been working on with the new website since December, and making sure that all the platform changes are done to accommodate our very large player base already, is to assume that the changes necessary on the referral system are being implemented right now. They're being worked on, and we should have them complete very soon.
Yeah.
They're going to incorporate some new features, such as a code field. So you don't only have to use a link, you can also have a unique code that's assigned to your account, and you can share that that code with players, and they can utilize it when registering for an account. It'll also have a more in-depth kind of tracking system that players will be able to utilize to kind of see the performance of their campaigns or whatever as well. But those ancillary systems will come online after the initial launch. We want to get up and running as soon as possible, the links and codes first. And then we also want to make sure to migrate the previous data. Right now it's dependent on players migrating. We want to be able to migrate that for expenditures over to the new database.
And originally we were kind of hoping to do the code redemption stuff at the same time as that, so that it would all come out together, but we decided that we would put up the code redemption for like Kickstarter and stuff like that right away, so that you guys and gals could do that right away, because we knew we had some tickets in queue that were, we couldn't solve those until that was available. So that's been solid, and mad props to our CS team who's been kicking some booty. So if you've ever put in a ticket, those should be all resolved. Please check your tickets. Hopefully that time has been much better for you all, because we've been working hard on that end. But yeah, I'm excited to get the referral stuff back on track and running and rolling. So our next question here is from Mr. Quantum Observer, wondering, you mentioned private property sales certs. Is this like a landlord thing where you can rent your space? Will a wealthy enough guild be able to buy the auction house or other interested buildings in a node?
So there's a few theories that we're going to be implementing behind that. The most basic one is that this will allow players to transfer real property goods. So this includes freehold, this includes static housing, this includes apartments that they may own, and they can sell those because those will have limited and or finite quantity. This will not allow you to go above your one allotment of freehold in the game. So you will need to not have a previous freehold if you're going to purchase that. But it's something that kind of facilitates that trade between players. Additionally, some concepts that we have is going to be rental or leases that could be had, allowing players to kind of lease a property for a period of time where they will have control rights, or they'll have control rights over utilizing storage space on the area, controlling the furniture, access point, all that kind of stuff.
I always wanted to own a hotel. I think that'd be fun. Like, in a game, it'd be fun. Like an RP, the travelers coming in and. I don't know. Is that weird? It might be weird. Okay, moving on.
No, it's actually awesome.
Pennygal wants to know, how is the backend development going right now?
It's going extremely well.
We just answered that one, right?
I think we did.
Yeah, kind of.
Steven kind of went over it. But it is like Mitch, the work that Mitch has been doing, right? Like getting 3,000 characters onto a screen at the same time is pretty incredible. We've got, I think, 5 or 6 people really focused on really pulling out what we can in order to keep things moving good on the server. So, we had over 200 people on the 200 live players on the server at once. We should be able to push that up now quite significantly. Yeah. We haven't gotten enough people to do one of those tests yet to see where our new cap is, but we will soon. And we have grown leaps and bounds on our server architecture in the last 3 months. So I certainly have been super impressed.
Cool. You have anything else you want to add to that? Mm-hmm. Cool. Our next question is about auction house stuff. How exactly does an auction house work in conjunction with a player shop and rental stalls? Can you buy and sell from an auction house, or is it simply a place to list all the items an economic node is selling and their location? Is there maybe a taxation difference between auction houses versus player run things?
So auction houses will have a listing fee. And auction houses can be accessible in order to list items from the economic node in which the auction house exists. You'll be able to view items that are listed on an auction house from vassaled nodes, whether they're economic or not, through the auctioneer that or the emissary that gets placed there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll make sure you can't list there.
You can't list there.
You will need to travel to the auction house that contains resources and or material. Raw resources or processed materials. You'll need to travel to the auction house's location where it is listed in order to retrieve the stored goods in that node. And then if you want to move them elsewhere, you'll need to move them via caravan or any other type of transportation standpoint.
Gonna be so interesting.
Additionally, player stalls. In an economic node, there is an area of space that's present near the unique building where players may put up a stall. Excuse me, they'll be able to put up a shop. And then in addition to that, there will be rentable stalls that are capable of being utilized for a period of time based on your expenditure. That will, you'll be able to list any number of goods there for a period of time. There will be an attendant that gets assigned to the stall, and that stall's goods will be listed on a bulletin board that players can access from anywhere in the region and know where the stall's located to travel there and purchase. When the economic node reaches, I believe it's a metropolis stage, it will sell personal shop certificates. Now this allows players, non-citizens and citizens alike, to go to the metropolis. They can purchase the player shop certificates, and they can put up a player shop anywhere in the world with that certificate. They don't have to be near the economic node's unique building and in a designated shop area. Instead, they can go out in the real world and put up a shop if they wish.
Somewhere in your inn, perhaps,
yes.
or maybe if you're running, you know, a little shop on the crossroads on your freehold, you can put it there. But yeah.
All right, and the next question that we have is from Trilldoms, wanting to know, can you own chunks of land without developing it? Oh, that'd be kind of cool if you could just own a bunch of, people could own a bunch of land and just be like, it's a reserve.
You could put down your freehold and not put any buildings on it. You could put down your freehold and just put a bunch of farm stuff on
put
it,
sheep
right?
on it.
Garden.
Yeah. There's lots of things that are not explicitly buildings that you can put on your freehold and have it represent, you know, something along those lines.
All right, I think we're gonna wrap things up here, if that's cool with you.
Sure.
Oh, sweet. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in today. Hopefully you all enjoyed listening and hearing from some new faces.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched some of our previous content, but it was
That was
great
exciting.
having,
I think that was a lot of fun.
Bacon and
Yeah,
Brad
that
on.
was a lot of fun, and I think important thing to note, you know, moving forward, I'm definitely a proponent of this format. I think it was good. Important thing to note for you guys is that as we kind of roll out this format in the future, again, this is work in progress, so do not walk away from this thinking this is an end product that you're viewing. And
You're
make sure that
under the hood.
you're getting under the hood look.
Yeah.
With regards to additional footage and gameplay footage, you know, we do these streams monthly, and we release articles weekly. So you can expect to
Try
start
to
seeing.
do them weekly.
Right, we try to do them weekly. Well, I think we release something every
Yeah.
week.
Been
But
pretty good.
you can look for additional like gameplay and, you know, MMORPG footage stuff as we move forward in future streams and stuff. Expect to see that because we are moving full steam ahead towards an Alpha 1 release, and a lot of stuff's coming online and is starting to look in a presentable fashion. So.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think whenever we show these systems, again, keeping in mind what Steven said is, you know, the design stuff especially is like when you're showing these systems and how they function, a lot of what we're going to be showing is now this is how it functions, but this isn't what its end game going to look like. Like it's still going
Right.
to have some polish elements to
Yeah,
it.
you
so-
might see a lot of what we call programmer UI as well. That's basically, you know,
It's not pretty.
It's not pretty, but
But we have a
it
UI
gets the
designer
function
now
done too.
who's been
Yeah,
doing
for
some
sure.
amazing
He
work.
just is not going to get to all the
Yeah,
features
not
that
all
are
of
being
them.
implemented.
Not all of them yet. But yeah, so just final reminders that you can check out all of our new content on our website. So ashesofcreation.com/news has a bunch of new content there. We're trying to keep that up to date. So always go over there. You can check out our forums as well, and we are keeping in touch with everybody over there. We will have this VOD up over on Twitch as soon as this is over, so if you want to go check it out. And then it will be uploaded to YouTube right after that, and we'll let you all know on our social media channels whenever it is up there. So if you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and all of that jazz, we'll always give you guys new updates and all of that. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next month.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
and gals.